Hi, how you doing? All of the plants are going to start moving out of the greenhouse pretty quick now, and thank goodness for that because it's getting pretty crowded in here. Before that big plant out begins, I thought we'd take a look at the state of everything that I started from seed, the overwintered plants and the cuttings and the bare root perennials and the annuals that I bought so far. We'll go through everything in here today, as well as what's waiting outside already and what I've already planted out. It's a big update on the last few months, so grab a coffee and settle in. My name is Sharon and I garden in East Central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. It's finally week 0, May 25th, which is always my estimated planting out date. Well, today's the 22nd, but we're almost there. It's close. We had frost just 4 nights ago on May 19th with a low of -3, and I think that may have been our last frost for 2026. And of course, we had all that snow on the May long weekend. And the lows the past few nights since that snow have been around 5, but from now on, the long range forecast does look pretty good. I do take that information cautiously, though. Curveballs have known to be thrown when Mother Nature throws a random hissy fit, right? And today is cool, overcast, a little drizzly, and relatively calm. And I think a lot of the plants in here will enjoy a breath of that moist, fresh air out there and maybe a bit of soft rain without fear of sunburn or windburn. Those wagons that I pulled out, those have most of the zonal geraniums, the mother plants and the cuttings, and I'll show them a little closer in a minute. Right now, I have 2 of these hanging baskets of ivy leaf geraniums, and they are headed outside to make a little more room for me. I overwintered these geraniums as mother plants, and they did really well underneath grow lights. This is one, and the second one is just back here. And they did really well growing underneath the grow lights. I did take a bunch of cuttings, and I'll show you the state of those just in a minute when we get back outside. So I was happy with that, considering that when I bought them, they were very small plants last summer, allowed to grow to something like this, and now I have this big full hanging basket that is just starting to put out a whole bunch of blooms and new growth. So I'm pretty happy about those. And right after I get those outside, then the tomatoes are going out, and it's about 10 degrees outside, but it's warmer underneath the frost blanket or the row cover that I have set up with hoops and row cover on the bed that these are going to be planted in. I did put a thermometer under there just to see how warm it is. I suspect it's going to be around 15 degrees underneath the row cover, even though it's about 9, 10 outside. These tomatoes just went berserk. When I initially planted them, I think it was the end of March. That's about the normal time that I would plant tomatoes, perhaps just a little bit early. Then I potted them up into these solo cups, and I brought them out here into the greenhouse at the end of April. And then they just, like Jack and the Beanstalk, they just went crazy. Very thick stalks, very, very healthy, little top heavy because there's so much growth. I don't have them staked. And the root structure, this is Esterina, by the way, and she is an indeterminate, and she's a bit of an overachiever. The root balls are not entirely root bound yet, and I really did not want to pot these up into something bigger. I really had hoped I would just be able to get them out in the garden, and it does look like this week or maybe another 5 days is what I'm thinking before I will actually plant them out. I have 2 Esterina, and they're the biggest, but all of them are really large. The Beef Maestro are huge. The Fiorentino are huge. Even Early Girl has, it was kind of wimpy at the beginning, and is this Early Girl? Even that one has kind of taken off and is doing a lot better. Yeah, that's Early Girl. So Early Girl is my smallest tomato. I think they're all doing really well. I think they will do all really well. I actually have twice as many tomatoes as I need. I'm only planting 9 in the raised bed and then 1 in a in a 5-gallon pail. Esterina is going to go in her 5-gallon pail. Yeah, so I have too many, and I don't really want to just toss them. I do want to find a home for them. So I'm just going to pull these out, and then I'm going to take these to the raised garden, and then the next time you see me, I'll be over in the raised garden. Okay, so here's where the tomatoes will spend the day, and then I'll bring them back in for the night. Tonight's low, I think, is supposed to be 8, but it's not like it really holds a great deal of heat. It does hold the soil heat, but it doesn't hold the air temperature, the row cover, I mean. So I just took the temperature under the row cover before I opened it up, and it was 15.6 degrees. And it is only 11 o'clock, not quite 11, so it's going to continue to warm up in here through the day. Even with the heavy cloud cover, there is still enough sun that gets through and gets trapped under this row cover and helps to keep that atmosphere warm at least. And as I mentioned, they're a little top heavy, so the trickiest thing about moving them is keeping them upright. So I put them in those clear totes, and then I stuffed some row cover in between the cups just to keep everything from tipping over too much. I had quite a time with that yesterday until I figured out the row cover in between. That helps. And so quick, I'm just gonna put that row cover back on and get that all secured so that they can stay toasty for the day. And I should have mentioned before I close this all up again that just on the south side of where those tomatoes are going to be planted, I've already seeded 2 rows of carrots. So I'm just going to take the camera handheld and show you the other things that I've already got planted here in the vegetable garden. We got the bed ready, and I planted out these Rowena strawberries. Now, if you recall, I started these from seed. I'm going to put up the dates on the screen because I can't remember them all off the top of my head when I seeded all of these, not just the strawberries, but everything. But I am so impressed with these Rowena. They are an F1 seed and hybrid, and they are supposed to produce in the first year. And honestly, I kind of think they might, just by the looks of them. So, as I've said before, this is my last kick at the can. This is my third time's a charm try at growing strawberries. I haven't had much luck to now. These 4 lighter green ones on the end are just some that I bought over at the greenhouse just to be able to finish off my bed. But I sure hope these winter. Oh, look at that. Speaking of producing fruit, in the first year there is a bloom forming on this one. And I have the row cover there. I have had them covered overnight. They've only been here for a little while, planted out just for a little while. And I will utilize the row cover if we have some weather that comes along or still cold nights. That could happen. I'll use that row cover. You may have seen these holes in the tomato bed when I had that bed uncovered. They look like molehills, but what happened was we bought an auger that goes on a drill. It's a 16-inch auger and 4 inches across, and it really did drill those holes 16 inches deep. And you know, that drill works a lot better than I thought it would, perhaps because this is soft garden soil, and it's free of any big rocks or anything like that. I don't know, we haven't tested it yet on planting a perennial or something like that. That was the intention, to use it for that. But I was pleasantly surprised at how well it worked. Andy did it. He did experience the odd bit of bucking every once in a while, and probably a bigger voltage drill would perhaps work better or stronger, but what he used worked just fine. And I've had this bed under cover as well, mostly because I seeded beets and rutabaga on the outsides of the bed, and in the middle is my garlic. The soil temperature under the row cover is 14 degrees. Here I planted out the onion. I did have it covered, but when it started to rain, I decided to uncover it so that it could get a nice soaking. They went in okay. This bed was tilled to make it easier to pop in all of those onions. There's 5 rows there, and we will set up drip watering. And lastly, this is all the cabbage, kale, and broccoli that survived the snowfest on the long weekend, and it's looking a little more purple than when it went in, but overall it's doing just fine. And before we get back into the greenhouse, I'll just go over the staging area, and these are my 9 pots of bare root astilbe that I started, and so they're doing well. They're sprouted and putting on growth, and they stayed out here during the snow as well. And a few more perennials. These were also bare root. These are a perennial geranium. They've been blooming for quite some time, and they're just starting to lag now to stop blooming, and so I expected they would do that. A perennial sedum. This is Sun Sparkler Cherry Tart, and a couple more that I bought are lupins. Mini Gallery Red is what they're called. Also toughing it out outside, I have 4 pots of cherry brandy rudbeckia. 5 plants germinated for me from the package of seed, that was all. And this pot in particular looks pretty sickly. But the other 3 pots do look good. The rest of this in this tray are all my seeded foxglove. I have a couple pots of dill started. Those are going to be for the container that I'm going to just grow some salad greens and stuff in. I have some leftover onion. There's the collards that have been growing in a pot for a couple months. They seem fairly happy. I've been contemplating trying to put them in somewhere, but they would also be bothered by flea beetles and by the cabbage butterfly, so that has to take some thought about where they might be able to go. Then I have a bunch of lettuce seedlings, also for those containers that I'm going to pot up for salad containers. I have a bunch of leftover cabbage and broccoli. And over here I have, these are primula seedlings right here. I have a couple or a dozen of those. And these are my own save seeds for thalictrum. Also tucked under those cabbage leaves are a few more primula. And finally, out here, I bought a couple of Proven Winner Graceful Grasses Vertigo, a perennial dianthus, and this is called Beauty's Tyra Garden Pinks. I think it's just a gorgeous color. That was an impulse buy. And so were these dianthus. And these are called Carnation Capitan Purple White. And the rest of this is wire vine. I overwintered 1 plant and then took a bunch of cuttings. Okay, back into the warmth of the greenhouse. It's 17 inside of the greenhouse now. So I just thought I'd talk about the regal geraniums. I'm also going to punt them outside for the day. These were my mother plants. This is one. These are, I do have names for them, elegant something. This one is Elegance Purple Majesty, and it's really having a beautiful bloom at the moment. There's some dead, dried leaves in there that I have to pick off, but beautiful bloom for sure. And this one is another mother plant that I had cut back and also probably took some cuttings, and so it's not as big as the other. Actually, I like the color of the other one a lot more. And this one also has a name. I don't see the tag right off the bat. I have another pot of it in the house and the tag might be in there. It is also an elegance though. And then the cuttings that I took really well. I took them pretty early in the year, perhaps even late in 2025. And so I potted them up, potted 3 plants or 3 cuttings, that's 3 cuttings, into one of these large bowls. And boy, I'll tell you, that's pretty, I'm pretty impressed with how fast they grew and how nicely they grew, even compared to zonals. I'm pretty impressed. And then, so I had 6, pretty much full-size plants from those cuttings. So I potted 3 each into these bowls, and I'll set them somewhere, but for right now, they're going to go outside. I probably should have explained a little further for those of you who maybe aren't aware, haven't seen any of my content before, and that is I overwintered those plants in the house under grow lights since last year. Pretty much all of my geraniums, except for a very few, I overwintered in the house. I got some more geraniums. Surprise, surprise. So this is another regal geranium. I'm pretty sure it's called maybe Aristo White or something like that. It was mislabeled, and I know it is not what the label said, and so I feel like maybe they got a few of these in their shipment and didn't get tags. Anyways, pretty. I'm going to say that if it's not Aristo White, then it is in the Elegant series, because all the others that I got from there were in that series, and so I'm thinking that that's what their supplier supplies them with. This one is beautiful. I absolutely love that color. This is also a regal geranium. They are also known as Martha Washington geraniums. They're treated slightly differently than zonal geraniums. They don't like that full-on harsh sun like zonals can take. This one is called Elegance Kate, and she looks like she might be growing. She might be a tall one. Eventually it might be suitable to try growing one of these as a standard, which I think might be my next kick at the can, trying to do. The third geranium that I've bought is a Calliope. Calliope geraniums are crosses between zonals and ivy leaf. Some of them are upright, some of them are cascading, and this one in particular is a cascade. It's called Cascade Violet, and it has really big blossoms. These are also going to go outside for the day. I forgot to go over what's on the cart out there, the rest of the zonals and the ivy leaf cuttings. And so we'll do that in just a bit. You may recall I seeded some geraniums, ivy leaf geraniums called Fancy Pants. And out of 20 seed, I think there was 20 seed, I got 6, I think I got 10 seedlings out of that. And they have started to take off now, I will say. They were kind of languishing for a bit. They were also really sporadic germination. I had some that germinated very fast, and then it took forever. I was actually pricking out the ones that had germinated because they were getting quite large, and I didn't want to keep them in the tray with the humidity and on a heat mat anymore. So I was pricking them out and potting them up separately and still allowing the rest of them to germinate. I think they look good right now. I don't know what they'll amount to through the summer, but I probably will overwinter them. This one is actually forming a bit of a blossom, and so I will get to see. It's a mix. Fancy Pants, it's a mix, and so I don't know what the colors will be. Oh, there's another one with a bit of a blossom. I will let them bloom just so that I can see the colors. I have many of these. This is a zonal tricolor leaf geranium, I think, and it's called Mrs. Pollock. Now that it's in the greenhouse, it's really showing a lot of color in the leaves. There's red, and there's orange, and there's green, and there's that creamy yellowish white edge. Just a beautiful geranium. The new growth is, that sort of more vibrant green color. What I did with a lot of these was I picked off all the older leaves, and that allowed these to grow. One of these I'd like to start and try doing a standard, because I think this would be a very good candidate, only because it is such a robust grower and it does grow so tall. But, you know, so I picked them off so that they had almost a bare stem, but then that pushed all that new growth. Here is the mother plant for Mrs. Pollock. Now, when I bought this last year, it was probably smaller than the cuttings I have now. So it's a very aggressive grower, I think, and I've taken all those cuttings. I cut this back quite a bit, and you can still just see how much growth there is. I'm not really fond of the blossoms, but I am going to let it bloom more this year and combine it with some other plants and see if I like it a little bit better with the blooms that way. I'll go handheld and just show you what's out on the carts for the rest of the geraniums just quickly. So on this wagon are all of the mother plants. So most of them I have taken cuttings from. Some of them are just coming out of a big bloom. Some of them are going into a bloom, and all pretty colors that I think I'd just like to keep as mother plants. This one is one of my favorites. It's Antique Rosalie Salmon, and it's just so pretty. It will get a little bit more salmon-y color once it starts getting more light out or stronger sun outside. This one is Vancouver Centennial. Just look at how that colored up since it's gone outside, as opposed to, you know, sort of greenish leaves with a bit of dark coloration. But yeah, that's just a beautiful colored leaf geranium. This is a stellar geranium. Has a little bit of a different leaf, and the flower looks a little bit more, the individual flowers look a little bit more star-like. In the wagon over here, these are all the cuttings that I started of the ivy leaf geraniums. And so, you know, they look massive when they're in there, but when you pull them out, they're really single or double kind of stems that are beginning to bloom. Where I'm planning to put them, I think that I will probably use 6 in a small pot just to make it look nice and full. These are the geraniums that I overwintered in a paper bag. I have 6 that were suitable, you know, that look nice enough to put on a lot of growth and become something instead of something just wimpy. So yeah, 6 of those. I don't know which colors I have, but they are coming into bloom, so I suspect I'll know soon enough. Here I have cuttings of the zonal leaf. And I think I have, I don't know, 10 of those or something. Here I have Shamrock oxalis, which I overwintered one plant and then took a bunch of cuttings. I think there's a dozen. And this is from seed. This is Dusty Miller. The new look Dusty Miller, which is a fat leaf, kind of like that angel wings. It's not a cut leaf. Okay, so these other 2 hanging baskets, this one and that one right there, that's the purple bellvine that I potted up. And okay, here it is a little bit closer. So you can see these blooms are happening. It is blooming. I thought it would be fuller, you know, a lot. There's 4 plants, 4 purple bellvine plants in here, and I thought that they would be a lot fuller. I did pinch them as they were growing. I think I've found out that they really don't like the harsh sun in the greenhouse. At least it looked like I had some kind of burnt leaves, almost like sun scorch. See there? And one plant in particular, it just seems like it gave up the ghost, one of the ones that I had not yet planted. Anyways, I did put in a strawberry punch, calibrachoa, into the top just to make it look a little bit fuller. To me, this looks like it is going to be pretty slow growing, even though I did start those seeds in January. And here's the other one. You know, again, here are the blooms. First it blooms with this little calyx, this sort of umbel shaped thing right there. It blooms just with this first. It begins to develop like this. It begins to develop these little pendulous things, and then those extend further and further, and then eventually they open up to this. I think if it was really full, it would be really pretty. As it is right now, I think it's kind of meh, but it is early in the season. So, and then I have 3 more that I have not yet potted up. I will very soon. These are doing good. They look, you know, they look a lot better when they're in the small pots, but then when you put them in the big pots, it seems like they could be more, I guess. So I do have 3 that are still growing nicely in these pots. I think you have to take a lot of care when transplanting these. I have a feeling that they do not like root disturbance. And as I mentioned, I don't think they also like hot burning sun, and I'm pretty sure this one is dead from that. You know, the roots aren't dead, but all the top foliage died. It just kind of crisped off. I had it kind of in the southwest corner of the greenhouse there, where it was just getting blasted with heat all day long. And I was watering it a lot too, because it was getting blasted with so much sun. And then it just started to decline. I saved the other 3, you know, I pulled them away from there. They were under a little bit more shade actually than this one. This one was like right in the sun all day long. And I just don't think it liked that, even though these are native to Mexico. That's where they come from, but not on the beaches of Mexico. They're native to up in the rainforest kind of thing, and they climb up through the trees, and they have that kind of warm, although in Mexico they call it cool, but it's kind of that warm, misty, cloudy type of environment that they live in, and then they climb up through the trees. So I'm not sure about the absolute full sun. I have read that that it's best to provide them with midday shade. You know, that's easier said than done, especially in a hanging basket. So I'm going to see how they go. They are a nice challenge to grow. I think they're interesting. I always think something different is interesting to grow. So I'm going to pot these up. And I think I'm going to plant them up with a couple of these petunias. These are actually petcoas. They're a cross between petunia and calibrachoa. This one is called Enviva Pink. They will spread 50 to 75 centimeters and grow height-wise, or probably hang up to 40 centimeters. So that they should hang quite nicely. And they should fill out that basket with the purple bellvine, which now I only have 3 plants. These pots over here have 4. Now I only have 3. So I think I like the looks of these cocoa mat type of planters, but I hate planting in them. A couple years ago, I discovered that you could put a plastic pot inside one, and Dollarama has these are 12-inch, I think. Dollarama has these 12-inch pots for, I think, $5. They fit in there perfectly, and I just take some of that extra matting and kind of stuff it around the outside rim where it's showing a bit. This is way better than any other method I've tried, including lining it with all kinds of things to try and retain the moisture. They are just difficult to grow in, and I have found that one of these plastic pots inside is really the answer. That's where the rest of these purple bellvine are destined, along with these petcoa. I think instead of bringing everything up and showing you, I think I'm just going to go handheld and show you what I've purchased for the annuals. These really caught my eye. These are called Petunia Crazy Tunia Rose Gold, and I thought they'd look quite nice with burgundy. I picked up a number of yellow Super Tunia Mini Vistas. I did want another variety of yellow petunias. It was something with finch. I can't remember the name, but I couldn't find them, so I went with these. I also have some Supertunia Mini Vista Scarlet right there. And I was thinking that I have this geranium in the middle of it because this Mrs. Pollock geranium, because I kind of think the yellow and red with these as the thriller in the middle, I think that's going to look nice. Then I have all of my starts for the cucumbers and squash and zucchini and melons. And back here I have Supertunia Vista Jazzberry, that's the pink, and next to it is the Supertunia Mini Vista Indigo. I thought the two colors looked kind of nice together. Skipping over here is another crazy tunia. This one is called Cosmic Purple. And I kind of thought that they would go nicely with the rose gold. I think those colors might blend nice together. I think these crazy tunias do act a little bit more like waves perhaps, or not like proven winners. I think these crazy tunias, in my experience, they do benefit from getting pinched back occasionally. Otherwise, they will get a little leggy. Generally, I don't like to have to either clean off the dead blossoms, nor cut them back, but I did quite like that color. I was really taken with it, so I guess I'll deal with that. Here is another Calibrachoa that I cut back when I got it, and this one is Super Bell's Magic Double Grapefruit. Pretty color. I like those colors. Those kind of soft yellow and pink colors I think are really pretty. Two of the Color Blaze Velveteen Coleus, and they are actually going to get planted along with these Bidens or Bidens, and these are Blazing Star. That's an unusual plant for me to buy, but they really did look very striking. There's a lot of blossoms here that may need to be deadheaded. I'll have to see how that goes. I'm not sure how well they self-clean. And I think that's it for what I've purchased for annuals, but I do have a bunch of seed-grown stuff. So kind of along the edge and at the back, around this way. Those are all the lavender that I started back in January. And then I potted them up 3 to a pot. And they're growing well. They're growing slowly. They're not going gangbusters at all. And there was a little experiment going on there where some of them were cold stratified, some of them were not. These that are growing kind of taller and are a lighter green were the ones that were cold stratified. These that are short and bushy and a darker grayish green, they were not cold stratified. I thought that would all even out at some point and that they'd all start to look the same. But, you know, I can still tell the difference. This is one that was cold stratified. These were not, and they're all that same color, except for this one. I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting outcome on that. Here is my portulaca, finally beginning to look like something. They are looking good, all of them are starting to send out blossoms. So it's a mix of colors. You can see pink and red, and I'm sure this one will be white or yellow. That's pretty good timing to have them just coming into bloom now. You wouldn't want them to be blooming too much at this point. They're also multi-seed pellets, and so in one cluster, in one pellet, there was more than one plant, and I didn't divide those. I just planted them up that way. This is the Acerina vine. that I repotted maybe a month ago. I have a video showing me repotting it. These are also sensitive to root disturbance, which I kind of wish I'd have known prior to handling them, although I don't think I handled them roughly, but I do have one back here that is giving up the ghost, and well, some of it. It still has new growth at the very top that looks like it wants to live, but down at the base of the plant it definitely looks like it's dying. It's okay because I have enough of them, and the rest of them I think are growing okay. This one is perhaps a little weak, but again, new growth at the base looks really good. And my zinnias. I only had 2 packages of maybe 10, 12 seed, but gosh, terrible germination. So this is double Zahara. I only have 5. And of the Starlight Star Rose, I only have 2. I bought a package, actually several packages of mixed zinnia seed that I thought I could just direct sow, but I am just not certain. Now this has thrown a wrench into my plan for sure. Dichondra. I tried starting some by pinning some stems to soil, and some have taken. This one is a good one, and somewhere in here is another good one. I also did these. These are cuttings. They're taking a little better. I also found some seed and seeded some. This was the first seeding, and that was on March 21st. And I don't have a date on this one, but this was the second seeding because I found more seed when I was cleaning up or when I was cutting back or something. I found more seed. So they're taken and they're coming along, but they're very slow, and I'm not sure that I will actually get to use them this year. They, you know, it would be better for them to be much bigger. Like this, for example, that's just one puny little seedling in there, or, you know, puny little plant in there. But like I said, I don't think that they are really going to amount to much, and I probably will end up just not using them at all. Back here, I have the red shiso. That's growing very slowly. That's the another like a salad green that I plan to put in the container salad gardens that I'm going to grow. And these are some Autumn Joy starts. I started them last year, and I put them into what is now the strawberry bed, just as a kind of a holding bed, and then I had to dig them up quickly before I planted the strawberries, and so I do have to pot these up and I'm pretty sure this was an extra plant I had of painted daisy. So those are overwintered plants, cuttings that were in a raised bed and just dealt with winter the way it came. I don't know if you recall I believe it was October, I seeded 25 different seeds. 20 of them, I think, were from the North American Rock Garden Society, and then there were a few of my own. After I sowed those seeds, I dug the pot into the garden, into a trench in the garden. I didn't cover it with soil, but I did cover it heavily with straw. And I'm pretty happy with the germination, especially on the dianthus. They are germinating very well. I did have a list, and basically this is pot number 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it goes on. And so starting with pot number 1, that was an allium. The next 2 are also allium, 1, 2, and 3, and number 4 is an allium. There's no allium germinating in there. There's something, that one little thing, but that's not an allium. Armeria did not germinate. This is a Campanula topaliana, blue violet. That did germinate nicely. Very tiny, but that's okay. And this is a species crocus. Nothing there. All of these are dianthus. And then, so those are all dianthus up to number 16. Different kinds of dianthus. Then this one, 17, is Delosperma congestum. That's the one I don't know if it's going to be perennial, but for the price of a package of North American Rock Garden Society seed, I thought it was worth a try. This next one is Delosperma cooperi. The gentian did not germinate, this one, but this one is gentian cruciata, and that one did germinate. And at the same time, I had sowed a bunch of my own seed. There was hosta, and there was martagon lily, and there was thalictrum. I can't remember what else. I think there was 5 more pots of my own seed, and none of them have germinated. So now going forward with all of these little seedlings, I'm going to let them grow for a little while, get a little bigger in these pots, but then I will pot them up. I'm going to say probably 2 or 3 seedlings to each little pot, and I'm going to pot them up on their own, and hopefully by the end of August maybe they will be ready to be planted out into the garden. If not, I will winter them the same way as I started them, and that is by digging a trench into one of the raised beds, inserting the pots into that trench, banking up the soil on either side but not on top, and then I will cover with straw. And you know, once the snow comes and everything, I don't know, I think they should do okay that way. I've certainly wintered plants that way before, hardy plants. The last thing that I want to talk about is my disappointing peppers. So far I'm really disappointed in them, and one of the reasons is because they just keep getting aphids, and I'm having such a tough time with aphid control on them. It seems to be setting them back, and it's not specific to any variety. Some of them look all right. Some of them are just, I'm comparing them to last year, you know, and last year I just had such beautiful peppers. This year the leaves are kind of small. A lot of them are misshapen, and every time I look, you know, there's some evidence of aphids, although I can't necessarily see the aphid, but I do see aphid sheds, like those little white bits that fall. So, you know, probably a month ago or 3 weeks ago, whenever the ladybugs started getting active out there, I went and caught a few ladybugs and brought them in here, hoping that they would do the trick. But I don't think the ladybugs stuck around. I think they flew out. You know, I usually keep that half door open during the day. This pepper looks pretty good. This one is Red Knight, and it is blossoming normally. That's the other problem with a lot of these, is that they are blossoming tight and so small. Lots of blossoms. They do want to put on the fruit. So I'm not going to pinch or do anything anymore. I did pinch some of them, and that was also a way to try to control the aphids. There I have an Olympic. That's not too bad. You would think that perhaps they would be root bound or that they need to be transplanted. And I am going to grow them in here. Once everything is out, I'm going to grow them in 10-gallon grow bags, same as I did last year. So maybe they will get more robust at that point. The root balls are not terrible. Last year at this time, I did have to repot from these into bigger pots because they were really outgrowing their pots. This year they're not doing that. So, you know, we're going to see how they turn out. Here's a Jimmy Nardello. Again, this one is kind of blooming like mad, but I'm just not crazy about all those leaves, and they're kind of puckered, and to me it just looks like maybe they're going to suffer, or they're just not going to be strong, robust plants. I'll try my best. I'll see what I could do with them and see if hopefully I get a pepper crop out of them. Some of them actually started off weak right from seed, even before I noticed some aphids, or before the aphids came and started to attack them. I had to reseed some of them, and I think I landed up reseeding or using up all the seed that I had, thinking, well, you know, I only wanted 3 plants of Olympic, for example, and so I seeded 5 plants and I got 2. So then I seeded more and I got 1 weak one. And that was kind of the case with all of the peppers, except for perhaps King of the North. They were really good. Like they came up strong right from the get-go, but the others, not really. It was kind of a struggle, I have to say, kind of a struggle all season, from seed to now. So I hope they smarten up. We'll see. So I think that's pretty much a full update on what's going on. It's still a little early for me to do a yard tour, what died, what's alive kind of thing. I have noticed some things already that have died, but that will have to be just a little bit later while I wait for everything else to come back to life, because like I said, you know, just a couple days ago, our soil was only 4 degrees, and under the mulch, I'm sure it still is. It's still cold here. So thanks very much for hanging out today, listening to me gab. Hope you enjoyed your cup of coffee or beverage of choice. I do appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I truly do. I hope you found it interesting or enjoyable, and if you did, click those buttons for me. Give me a thumbs up, a hype, and if you haven't yet subscribed, hit that button too. I hope you're doing well. See you soon.